When playing old Minecraft as of recently, I've sort of come to this realization that there's this mystique and allure to the ambiance of the old versions that some of the newer versions don't have. And I'm not the first person to come to this realization. Like, that's a lot of the driving force for why people have been coming back to these versions because, like, very simple things such as the lighting engine, the terrain generation, fog being more prominent. Like, there's a lot of different contributing factors that lead people to playing on these old versions. But for me, that's been the main driving factor for why I want to play, because it's a more bare bones experience. There's less blocks, but that feel you get when playing in such a stripped down version of something you're so familiar with is so fascinating and it's so compelling. There's a very liminal feel to these older versions of the game that I think the newer versions have lost. And by liminal, I mean this feeling of emptiness that's not necessarily comforting or discomforting, but it's more so an in-between place. Like, there's a lot of in my building lately, I've been trying to sort of focus on this. Like, well, I want to flesh out the builds and make them visually appealing. There's also this desire to sort of balance that out and make these sort of empty spaces that are kind of, they don't necessarily serve a purpose. They don't make much sense, but they're there, a part of the build, and they're sort of intriguing in that sense. They're these little in-between places. And you can sort of see that with the build I'm doing right now. I'm sort of designing like an office building type thing. I think this lower layer that I'm working on, I'm going to turn into a cafe possibly. But there's just this, I don't know, this mystique, this ambiance, this feeling you get when you're playing these older versions is really, you can't recapture it in anything else. It's very, very unique to these. And I think I was thinking about this. I think there are certain games, and two come to mind, certain games that sort of give the same feeling, and they're Mario 64 and Gary's Mod. And I think the reason for those two in particular, as to why I feel they sort of capture this liminal sense, has a lot to do with, they feel very full and open-ended when in reality the maps are very closed off and not, I wouldn't say linear. Linear is a very bad word for that. The maps are more closed off. They're not as open-ended as they appear to be, but there's something about the atmospheres of the game that lends to the sense of liminality. And I think part of that actually is the skyboxes in those games, and that's why old Minecraft sort of feels the same way, because of the skybox mixed in with the fog. It sort of feels, because obviously, I mean, depending on what version you're playing, I play on beta 1.7.3, and that's an infinite terrain generation. But despite the infinite nature of it, it still feels much more close-ended than a newer version of the game. And Mario 64 and Gmod feel that same way to me, because Gmod lends itself to bigger maps in some cases, but a lot of the times you take very, very small maps and make them seem large due to crazy skyboxes. Like a lot of Gmod maps, and this is a very good technique that they used in Gmod and in Half-Life as well, is they sort of take these buildings off in the distance and make them seem, they're I don't really know how to describe it. They put buildings off in the distance that you can't access, but it lends itself to this larger feeling, like you're a part of a bigger world than you actually are. And Mario 64 does the same way, particularly in the level, I'm blanking on the name, but the level where you go, I think it's Wet Dry World, if I'm not mistaken, where you go into the secret cannon entrance, and the skybox is this, I want to say, it's this city, this massive, like, tiered, pillared city that they use as the skybox, and it's very off-putting because there's nothing else like it in the game. Yet here you are in this strange world with this crazy skybox in the background that makes it feel like you're in this tiny part of this massive city. And old Minecraft sort of feels the same way to me, in the sense that depending on how you make your builds, you can really stretch out the potential of what you have. Like for me, one of the big like pillars of my building concepts that I've been doing is making it so that every entrance and exit there's an entrance and exit to every build, and there's multiple different ways to get in and out of a place as opposed to just one exit. And that's partially because of how slow you move in old Minecraft. I find myself saving a lot of time walking around with these entrances and exits that I've made simply because of how slow I move. And that's been really important because it gives this sense of interconnectedness throughout what might be in reality a very small area. Like what I have right now in my world is a very small area, but it feels much larger than it actually is because I've created pathways, entrances, all sorts of things that connect different areas together, which I think is very interesting. It's not something that you find a lot in newer Minecraft, because in newer Minecraft you have the elytra, you have the ability to sprint, so you can just go wherever you want at all times and have no consequences whatsoever. There's not this sense of creating pathways, creating important landmarks that allow you to move quicker, if that makes sense. Like railway carts as well sort of tie into that in old Minecraft. They make it a lot easier to transport. I don't know. It's a very interesting phenomenon. I think I can make an entire different video talking about how movement is different. But I think I'm going to end that here. I kind of went off on a ramble, but I'd like to make more videos like this where I just sit down and talk about some of the things I've noticed in old Minecraft, because I've been playing it a lot lately. I've been playing on a server. If you're interested in joining that server, I'll link the Discord server down below in the description to that. But I hope you enjoy. Hope you have a good rest of your day. Take care.